All right. So again, welcome to the Pancake Masterclass, everyone. Thanks again for taking time out of your Sunday, maybe your Monday, depending on where you're at in the world, and hanging out with us to go over everything pancake splits. So just a little bit of housekeeping here. We're going to keep the mics on mute for this piece here and for the class. And then we'll open up for that live Q&A at the very end. So what I recommend doing, like if something does come to mind through the presentation or the live demonstration, just leave a note in the chat box and I'll be making sure to reference that when we get to the Q&A. So I think we did just have one person jump on. Just make sure your mic's on mute there. All right. So pancakes, we're going to get into how my brain operates when it comes to addressing the pancake splits and getting started. We're going to look at some special considerations for training the pancake splits. Specifically, we're going to look at the layers. Often the layers are what are overlooked when starting the journey or just trying to figure out where we need to be. Then we're going to get into just a little overview of the range of strength protocols. Every workshop we do, I'm probably going to just revise that really quickly, but it's always nice when we do a specialty workshop to review protocols specifically for that piece. So we'll talk about protocols for training pancakes and different scenarios that can be thought of. And then of course, we'll just talk about measuring success and progress, which is again, another area where sometimes we feel lost, trying to better understand how we know what kind of progress we're making. Are we getting better at pancake? What should we be thinking about other than just more range of motion? These are the kind of thought processes we want to get into today. So let's talk about the layers. And when it comes to most expressions of range, this is where my mind goes right away. Is like, what are the layers that we need to be thinking about to obtain that position? And if you can think about maybe the first time that you've tried a pancake split, or even you can just visualize how that might go for someone who sees another person do a pancake and then they try it, it usually goes like this. You get in a straddle leg position and you try to go forward and you think, oh my God, there's no way I'll ever be able to do that. That's some kind of genetic gift, right? And what happens there is we're basically starting at the end point and we're overlooking all the layers that go into consideration when trying to obtain that type of range of motion. So for me, in my coaching, my own journey and experience with helping others, these are the layers that I like to consider when it comes to training pancake split. And pretty much in that order. And you can kind of see there's some unconventional looking ones at the start here. Maybe if you're new to working with me or thinking about how I think about the certain positions of range. So if we look at these, number one, gluteal complex flexibility. Almost always overlooked for pancake and flexibility in general. Basically, if you have a tight ass, the pelvis isn't going to cooperate with us, okay? So we think about how we want the pelvis to orient in certain positions, and we want to learn how to tilt. We're going to look to get in positions where they may be lengthened or shortened. Having a very limited range of motion here is going to limit us quite significantly. And usually even when I work with individuals that have been training pancake for a while, it's one of the first things I'll look at is how is your glute flexibility? So glute flexibility, we might think of positions like the pigeon pose, because we do want measurable success in like how we're doing with that kind of expression. So pigeon pose is one that can express ownership of your glute flexibility. So where might that be in relation to your pancake training? A lot of times it's really imbalanced if we haven't taken the time to address that. The second one there, you see side bend flexibility, lateral flexion. So again, our limitations in our side bend are going to prevent our pelvis from cooperating with us, learning to move posteriorly and anteriorly. The oblique strength and length is also going to help us pull better into our pancake position. So we want to ensure that that is cooperating with our bodies before we think about just going right to the pancake position as well. We also can think about the pancake movement itself as a trunk dominant movement. So if we can think about our ability to move laterally as well as forward and back, we're going to be opening up those options. Shortening side strength. So our shortening side strength, the muscles that are shortening and pulling us deeper into the stretch position. Specifically for pancake, we're going to be thinking about the hip flexors, the abductors, and of course that compression strength from the abdominals pulling us deeper into the stretch. Again, how strong is that? And how much awareness do we have in performing those kind of exercises and understanding the kind of strength required there? And then the lengthening side flexibility. So this is where a lot of people will just start on that lengthening side, just getting into the split position, trying to express it before understanding the layers above. The class today is basically going to look at these layers, and we're just going to prepare to go through them as like a full sequence. So it's a very deep dive approach to training pancake. And lastly, we'll talk about overreaching strategies, because this comes up a lot too, and this might be something that prevents you from taking your pancake to another level. Is it okay to deviate from certain technical points? And how do we best do that so that we can make progress? Okay. So just a quick review here, guys. If you're new to the platform, the collection course is where you can dive into the methods and teachings pieces, and the range of strength protocol method is like kind of the bigger one that goes over how my mind operates when I program flexibility training. So just a little overview here. After the masterclass, I will be posting all of this to the the collection course for you to play back and to study and whatnot. So I'm just going to give you some examples of range of strength protocol method being used in a couple different scenarios for pancake. And if you're taking notes, you can go back and I'll have it there. So you'll be able to better kind of study that a little further. So there's two options here on pancake protocol work that I've used quite frequently, and I usually turn to depending on the person that we're dealing with. Option one usually is a really good strategy for someone who is really lacking experience in pancake and understanding the pancake and doesn't really have much range of motion or freedom to move in that position at all. So a strong focus on shortening side strength, gluteal complex length, side bend flexibility as a protocol. So really focused on conditioning and addressing these needs. And then you can see at the bottom that explore the space component where we learn to be in the position, more of the lengthening side approach, like actually being in pancake and trying to articulate all the work that we did prior to and transfer it to the position itself. And then option two is just that heavier focus on someone who's making some progress, has a little bit better understanding, and on the lengthening side has opened up some range of motion. So we're going to be primarily focusing on shortening side strength and side bend flexibility with that, and then as well as exploring the space. So we'll talk about some of those components, clusters, overreaching, crack method in today's class. Okay, measure progress. And this goes with any kind of expression of flexibility. Like, we want to measure progress. The first thing you should be doing when starting your journey is taking a picture of what it looks like from multiple angles, and then coming up with strategies to measure that, which I obviously can help you with as your coach. Just make sure you mute your microphone if you're joining. There you go. Thank you. So we can think about multiple ways to measure progress for pancake. So specifically first, the one that we all concern ourselves with the most is how much range of motion we're getting on our pancake. We want that chest to floor, ab to floor. We want a full pancake split. So some milestones within that. The degrees of range that you're getting at the start, I've discussed in the summer when we first released that pancake abundance protocol. So the pancake abundance protocol presents an option or strategy for training pancake more frequently, where about 60 degrees of range of motion with good technique is an ideal position to be in when we start thinking about maybe adding more or using some of these other strategies I'm going to present in today's masterclass. And then we can think along the lines of like head to floor, chest to floor, abs to floor, narrowing our straddle, over splits. These are things that we can think about when learning to move further in the pancake journey. All just further expressions of range, which sometimes can trap you into being frustrated because you're not seeing results. So two things here also think about. We want to measure angles. So taking pictures is important, but maybe like getting a nice side view profile so you can measure degrees of improvements, but also think about other things so you don't trap yourself to always thinking about gaining more range. The orientation of your pelvis. So if we're in a very flexed position and we're more posteriorly oriented, just improvements in that is a marker of success. Improvements on your short side strength. So one that I really like to use, you'll see quite often prescribed, is that seated straddle leg lift. So I would want you to really own that in your pancake journey. So if you can flatten the hands, have a really nice compression past your knees, lift those legs for easy 15 seconds or more, you're really expressing good progress on the shortening side position of your pancake. And then of course the side bend flexibility. So if you can't sit and straddle and get your shoulder to your leg, I mean, that would be a marker of success. Improvements on that lateral component, glute flexibility improvements. So we know that if your pigeon pose is getting better, it's going to leak into your success in other avenues of your flexibility. So measuring progress. So this is a good mindset to be in, where we're not always just focused on being further, but on top of those milestones, the orientation of the position, all these other components that we want to think about. So that's just a quick overview. I didn't want to spend too much time on that because I want to get to the good stuff. So we're now going to go into the masterclass itself. So I'm going to do a little bit of preparation work, talk about some of the details to get us nice and warmed up. And then we're going to get into basically those layers. We're going to look at some lateral flexibility series. We're going to look at some shortening side work. Then we'll actually get into the pancake position, discuss what we want to be thinking about there. And then we're going to look at some of those overreaching strategies. So if any questions do come to mind from that, you can drop them in the chat. I'm going to stop that share now, and I'm going to get set up with some space to show you some of these layers of the pancake. Okay. So just making sure you guys can see. First thing that we are going to work on is just warming up the pelvic tilt. And the pelvic tilt is going to be, this is one of those things in the journey that we really want to understand in certain folding patterns, side splits, pancake splits. Learning to actually tilt the pelvis anteriorly and posteriorly without overcompensation of the low back. This is going to be one of the pieces, and we can use it as a warm-up. So the one we're going to use today, a little bit more of a sumo stance position. So you can see my feet just to show you. So I'm actually going to just step outside of my hips. And what we're going to look to do is, from that sumo position, I'm going to push into my knees, and we're just going to do tilts. So that little push into the knee is actually going to allow me to find more range of motion in my posterior tilt and allow me to just move in and out of the anterior and posterior tilt and make a better assessment of how much I might be compensating with my low back. So it's a great warm-up strategy for getting into this kind of work. So you can find yourself a position where you can do that. I'm just going to let the time run for 60 seconds. There's no competition here on how many reps you can do, but rather the intention of each tilt. Okay. So posterior tilt, anterior tilt. Now you can notice my hands are placed on the abdominal and low back because I'm making an assessment of how much my trunk moves. So my abdominal wall and my ribs should not distend to create an excessive arch here, but rather stay in a neutral position and just find as much tilt as I can anteriorly without that compensation. Hold each position for a couple of seconds just to make an assessment of the strength. Good. So that's a great warm up and a good exercise you can add on a more regular basis to really grasp and understand those movements. We always talk about moving from an anterior or posterior tilted position. So we're going to open up the glutes and we're going to keep it simple with 90-90 to pigeon. We'll do one side at a time. We'll actually be in 90-90 first, and then we'll lengthen out to our pigeon pose position. I'm going to show it with a block elevation so we can use our yoga block if we need to and elevate just around the knee. So we're going to start with that 90-90 position. You can see here. So to get the most effective stretch from the glutes, we're going to be thinking about drawing our femurs in. We have a bit of an anterior tilt here, not an excessive low back arch, but we're thinking about that anterior tilt position. And then we're going to fold forward to find the stretch. So you can use the yoga block for elevation if need be by the knee. But we're going to hold the stretch first for 30 seconds, which is often that rule of thumb I talk about. Be in the stretch for 30 seconds before trying to stretch further or overstretch when we know we're going to be there for a long time. So this is going to be from 90 to pigeon, about a 2-minute hold. So 30 seconds has expired. We're going to create some contractions through the foot as it's more of a rotator contraction. So I want you to think about lifting the foot into the hand as a contraction. 3, 2, 1, and then we rest, relax, and move deeper if we want to, or just reevaluate the position. Then we're going to push the foot down into the ground. Three, 2, 1. Good. Now we are going to move into pigeon. So to do that, I'm going to bring this leg back. So you may need to elevate to do this effectively. So this leg kicks back. And what needs to happen here is I don't want to be collapsed into my hip, but I want to find that same alignment. Okay. So I'm going to shift the hip over and try to still be in that 90-90 position. So I'm going to do this elevated myself because I just feel like that's what I need today to get warmed up. And this is, again, holding the stretch for 30 seconds first, and then we'll do some contractions. So as you're holding the stretch, guys, we want to be thinking about those deep breaths in through the nasal and expiring through the mouth. That's going to help us find better control of our breath through the stretch, finding some good expansion through the rib cage and the midsection. For contractions now on this one, what we're going to do is press the knee. So I'm actually going to use my hand and press my knee into my hand as if I'm trying to lift. Three, two, one, and then relax. And you can find a deeper position if you'd like. Think about trying to align this back hip up as well. Now we're going to press down into the block for a contraction, down into the floor. 3, 2, 1. And then one last relaxation. You can evaluate how much you can fold here. And as we fold, we could posteriorly tilt to find a stronger stretch. And then take your time coming out of that position. So we're going to do that on the other side now. So that was about 3 minutes in the stretch, just with instructions and such. So you can think about, like, if you haven't spent that kind of quality time stretching your glutes, then this may be the game changer for you in finding better rotation of the pelvis. So 90-90 to start. You just want to find the stretch. Again, pull the femur in, a little anterior tilt. And with this one too, we can rotate more forward to get a better stretch from the rotators. So holding the stretch first, allow the stretch sensation to accumulate. So now we're going to do some contractions. So again, with the 90-90, we're going to focus on the foot. So think about lifting the foot up into the hand. Three, two, one, relax, readjust, maybe move a bit more forward to find that stretch again. Now we're going to press the foot into the floor. Three, two, one, relax. We're going to get ready to slide back into the pigeon pose. So you need your block to go under the knee. You can have that nearby. So we're going to be thinking about stretching that back leg back. Elevating will help you find more space. And then rotating our back leg to be a little bit more square and finding that same 90-90 position in the front leg. Torso's forward. Find the stretch by moving forward. We're going to allow that stretch sensation to accumulate for 30 seconds. A little bit more intensified now. So now we're going to be thinking about those contractions now through the knee. So my hand is going to come up by my knee, and I'm going to push my knee up into my hand. This is more of the shortening side. We're contracting first. 3, 2, 1, and we relax. We can readjust and move a bit deeper. And now we're going to do that pushing the knee down. So we're pushing the knee down into the block. Remember, a contraction is one that we really can't see, right? So we don't need to be contracting our face and everything and through our entire body here, as we're looking more so to relax deeper into this stretch. And when you're ready, you can come out of that position. So to prep the groin a little bit now, we're going to do our butterfly stretch. I'll just do it facing the camera so you guys can see what I want here. I want both of your yoga blocks. If you want to use a wall or your table, coffee table or something to lean against, you can do that. But just to show you what I want you to be thinking about for today's stretch is what we're going to do is place the blocks in the space under the knee. So what this is going to do for us is it's actually going to give us something to contract that shortening side against. So find the stretch first so that you can feel comfortable. Allow the stretch sensation to accumulate here. And our first contraction is going to be against the blocks underneath our knees. And we're going to keep them there for the opposite side contraction as well. So using your wall if you need to. When you're ready, I want you to take a big breath in through the nose, exhale through the mouth, and press down into the blocks. 5 to 10 second contractions are optimal zone for us with these longer static stretches. And we're holding that contraction. So press, 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 press. And relax. And relaxing doesn't mean we have to press down or anything. Just try to pull yourself a little taller. Feel that maybe you could adjust the feet if need be a little bit, but feel that the legs have kind of created some space to relax a bit more. Now we're going to do that shortening side, or lengthening side here. What I'm going to do, because I have nothing to lean up against, is I'm going to bring my elbows against the knee and we're going to press upward. So create a strong contraction, the adductors pressing upward. Now we're just going to remove those blocks and relax into the stretch and bring our knees downward. Readjust as need be. Right now we're trying to monetize this new range that we have from those contractions. So just do whatever you need to kind of feel like we've gotten some space here. If you want to keep the blocks there and experiment a little bit more with them, that's okay. We're just prepping the adductors here. Awesome. Shake that out a little bit. Last warm-up exercise here, guys. We're going to be doing the straddle elephant walk. So this was a newer presentation in the last couple of months with the Pancake Abundance Protocol brought that pancake preparation drill, which basically we're doing an elephant walk with a straddle leg. The big thing here is we don't want to go side to side with the whole body. So I'll show you what that kind of looks like. Is the legs are bent and my goal is to straighten one of the legs and bring my head towards the floor. What we don't want to catch ourselves doing is basically a side-to-side squat, right? So I've just been seeing some videos where we're losing the downward motion and we're basically just performing a side-to-side squat. The intention here is to not shift the hips too much. You see, my head stays pretty square. So I'm not moving my whole body. I'm straightening one leg. And with that straightened leg, I'm bringing my head closer to the floor if I can. So from the side view and down. And that's the similar action we get with the elephant walk with the legs closer together. So find your straddle leg position. So you see how much my legs are bent here. And we're basically just going to go side to side. So I'll do it from this way. So you again can just see how much I'm not moving side to side. And we're just going to go for a minute. So take your time, straightening one leg first, bringing the head towards the floor, bending back into that leg, and then straightening the other side, bringing your head towards the floor. And the leg doesn't have to straighten. It's the intention here. Trying to find
a better length through the hamstring while bringing the head towards the floor, compressing the torso deep. I can use my hands to pull myself deeper. It's either on the sides of my ankle and with each rep, I can think about stacking my hip a little bit more. Let's do one more. And then we're going to hold our standing pancake. So holding our standing pancake, we're aiming to bring both legs straight. And we're trying to stack the hip over the midfoot. Now, if the leg can't straighten, don't worry, slightly bend and keep the compression through the trunk like you're pulling yourself down. Over time, we will get better at the straight leg, just has to be practiced more. So we're thinking about pulling our head to the floor. And my arms are used to leverage, pull myself down. But what I can also do here is press into the floor and resist the press to create some reciprocal inhibition to come down a little bit further. Now with any fold, think about bending the knees and standing when you come up, okay? When you guys are ready, you can come up out of that position. So now we're going to work on some of that side bending flexibility. Okay, so I'm going to take you through a little series here. It's going to require the band. We're going to basically do a standing side bend, half kneeling, and then half straddle. So our standing side bend. So we can do this with arms overhead just to get a better understanding of how we bend side to side and actually just warming up the obliques and making it more isolated to the obliques rather than using the legs and the glutes and all these other components. So arms are going to be overhead, just going to help us be a little bit more strict. From the side, I'm going to put my pelvis in a posterior tilted position. So that's, again, going to make us more dependent on the obliques as we move from side to side. And what we're looking to do here now is laterally bend to the side. We're not bending the knees. We're going to feel the leg that we're moving away from has pressure, like we're pushing down into the floor, coming back up. Now find a comfortable range of motion without feeling like you're going to fall. We're going to do 10 reps. Calm breath. One more. Good. Very basic, but not super easy. So just to position the camera so you can see me from the floor now, this is one that you will see in the programming where we do the kneeling side bend. So the kneeling side bend, we want a yoga block to elevate the knee. So elevating the knee is going to make it easier for us to have space to bend. Because that question comes up a lot, like, why are we elevating the knee? Well, we could do it from the floor, but it's going to be harder if we don't have that range yet. So we're going to create some space by elevating that knee. What I'm going to do with the band today, so I'm just showing you a different approach to this, where when it comes to side bending, again, our strength is going to be limited by our ability to feel like we have strength being pulled into the position rather than just bending into the position. So you can see my band is looped into my foot. I'm going to use the opposite arm to come overhead. So if you don't have the band option, the same that we just did can apply here, but we're just being focused on the one side. If you have the band, we're going to do the 5 reps, and we're going to try to keep the arm pressed overhead. Now, the rotation here is important, so we want to feel like we can turn the chest ever so slightly away, and then come down and up. 1, back to center. 2, 3, 4, 5, and then switching sides. Okay, so get that secure if you are using a band. If you're not using a band, you can just do it with the arms as we did with the standing version. Nice and tall, arms straight. So remember to turn away. It's going to make more sense when you're in a straddle position. So turning, bend, 1, 2, 3, 4, one more, 5. Now we're going to the floor. So this is a cool little series for your side bend warm up, where you can go standing, kneeling, floor. And the same thing, half straddle. So this is half. And guys, when we think half straddle for our pancake, I'm not going to be out here, right? So we'll talk about degrees of abduction when we get to our pancake position, but just think about being 20, 30 degrees coming turned out this way, okay? We can use the band again. And if you don't have the band, arms here and down we go. But now same thing, overhead. I can place my hand on the opposite side, rotate away, bend down, and back up. 2, 3, 4, 5. Good job. Switching sides. We haven't even done a pancake yet, really, have we? So it's good for you guys to see the expectations on like the layers, okay? Get nice and set on the opposite side. Find your rotation and bend. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Good. So that is our side bend series, standing, kneeling, straddle. Within the masterclass itself, if you guys just play this back and do that as a whole deep workout, it's a really nice series to go through. We're going to focus on the shortening side strength now. So you can kind of see these are almost like protocols for each layer. And shortening side, we're going to be focusing on abduction strength, hip flexor strength in the straddle position. And we're going to overview that shortening side drill that you'll see a lot of us doing, or if you're new to the platform, you've seen people where they have the band overhead, and we're actually starting to get in the pancake positions. So for this one, I like to lock the band into my foot. So what I'm actually going to do is put it on one foot and loop it through. So it's actually locked in. Some of these drills, it just feels like the band will get flimsy, and that will help you lock it in a bit better. For this one, back lying abduction, so leg opening. So there's a couple things to think about here. I'll just demonstrate it first and talk about those things we want to think about. So you can see from that angle, basically what I'm doing is just the abduction piece here, right? But from the side, I just want to show you those considerations are that we're keeping joints stacked. We're not back here. And if we do have the capacity, we can compress a little bit more, but not to the point where we're getting very compressed and really sacrificing the low back, but just a little bit more over the sternum, okay? We're gonna do 10 reps with a 3 count, and I'll count us out on these ones, okay? So get ready in position. Legs are up, and when we're ready, we're gonna open as far as we can. Think about externally rotating the femurs. 2, 3, and back. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Think about your knees staying straight. 1, 2, 3. That's 4. 1, 2, 3, 5. 2, 3, 6. 1, 2, 3, 7. 1, 2, 3, 8. 1, 2, 3, 9. One more. 2, 3, 10. So you think about, guys, if you're getting a good burn from that, the pancake requires us to have that strength to actually open our legs and fold. When we fold, we want to maintain that strength. So I'm going to keep the band on now for the next one. And the bilateral straddle leg lift. It can be quite hard. So, I mean, if you're there, if you do want to challenge yourself and do it with the band, by all means. But let's think about our regression. Most people can do a single leg straddle leg lift, but here's the issue. You do a single leg straddle leg lift. Are we really doing a straddle leg lift when our leg is not abducted with good strength? So the challenge here today, I want you to keep band tension on, and we're going to do a single leg straddle lift without our leg collapsing in as best that we can, okay? So 5 reps each side. When you're ready, hands by the knee or close to. 1, 2, 3. It's 1, 1, 2, 3. 3 more. Okay, 2 more. 1, 2, 3. Last one. 1, 2, 3. Good. Keep that tension on. Check in with that. Go into the other side. When you're ready, 1, 2, 3. Good. Up. 1, 2, 3. We don't have to lift super high here, right? We just want that isometric contraction. 1, 2, 3. 2 more. 1, 2, 3. 1 more. 1, 2, 3. Good. All right. You can come out of that torture. So the band now being used for shortening side drill. Shortening side drill can be done on the slant board. And that's how I present it on the abundance protocol. So if you do have slant board, you can use that. I'll demo on the yoga blocks just because that's what my expectation was for you guys to bring the yoga blocks. So yoga blocks are together. And this is elevated. Now with this setup on the yoga blocks, all we actually have to do is just set it underneath our legs as close as we can to the blocks. So the shortening side drill is basically moving into pancake now with the downward force of the band coming through the arms down to the hip flexors. Why we're having so many wins with this, guys, is because the pancake is a forward-reaching movement. So using the band is almost like someone pressing down on your hands. If someone's pressing down on my hands, as I go into the fold, I'm going to get a much stronger reach. I'm going to create this reciprocal inhibition on the shortening side to relax my hamstrings, and I can move forward. What we're going to do today is 10 seconds forward, 5 seconds back without bringing the band down. Okay, so you can see the setup, the arms go overhead, right? Thinking about how far my leg should be open, when I come forward, it basically should be arm's length. I'll review that again when we get out of this position and move into the more specific ones, but that's about as much as we want to straddle here. So arms are pressed overhead with the band. Try your best to keep good intentions here through the trunk and the pelvis. Move forward for a 10 count. And then come back. We're going to actually keep the band up overhead for 5. Breath in, exhale, move forward for a 10 count. Press into the band as much as you can. Come up, hold overhead for 5. Take a breath in. Exhale, move forward for a 10 count. And come out. So slowly bring the band down. Getting some pump in the shoulder there too is fine, as we want all of those things engaged for pancake. So we're moving to the long side, lengthened side. So actually pancake folding and looking more to get that stretch through the adductors and hamstrings now. We're going to start with elevated pancake. So pancake, that question comes up a lot, like how far should my legs be apart? About arm's length. Okay, so I mean, even if you needed that visual on the floor, you could lie on your stomach and just lay your hands out, right? And I would know that's where my hand should be, or that's where my leg should be for abduction. So if you need to do that now, you can to figure that out if you haven't done that before. But that's about a good limit, because again, when we want to do a pancake, we want the hamstrings to be involved. We want the trunk to be involved in that compression. When we start going too far out, it just becomes more of a straddle split, which is a progression that we could go to. So we're going to start with an elevated pancake hold. And we're going to do that with the blocks. So this is going to be a 60-second crack method is what we're going to use for this one. Let's talk about our contractions here for crack method. what I want you to think about here, because I want the hamstrings to relax a little bit more, and I want to work on my compression strength. For our first contraction, I'm actually going to have a soft bend in my knee. So the reason being is that I'm going to actually pull my heels towards my butt, and my hands, I'm going to pull towards myself. So it's like I'm sliding my hands towards myself. So I'm creating that isometric contraction in more of a closing manner. So that's the first one. The second one is going to be now legs are straight. I'm coming to the floor and I'm actually pushing to the floor, like I'm pushing forward. So as far as you can, wherever that limit is, we're going to actually push forward, but not allow ourselves to actually push forward. In between those, we're going to have periods of relaxation where we just relax into our fold. Okay. Let's do that first. So we're going to relax wherever you are in your pancake. Remember how much the expectation of anterior tilt at the start, right? Just enough. I don't want to overcompensate, distend my ribs a ton, but I want to feel like I can actually push my hips back as I come forward. So we're settling into the stretch first, and then we're going to do these contractions. So our first contraction is going to be pulling inward. So I'm going to bend my knee or move myself into a position where I have a soft bend. I'm going to pull my hands in towards my pelvis and pull my heels towards my glutes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Relax. Come forward. Assess the position. Now reach as far forward as you can, where you feel like you can still push into the ground. And I want you to feel like you're pushing yourself back. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Relax. Make sure that you're still breathing calmly and that you're relaxing the legs in the position. We're going to do both of those one more time. So soft bend in the knee. Press the hands towards the pelvis. Press the heels towards the glutes. 3, 4, 5. Relax. Hands are forward. We're going to press forward as hard as we can, as if we're reaching, but the ground is preventing us from reaching. 3, 4, 5, and relax. Now coming out of that position, where we're doing multiple sets now in the lengthened side, it'll be important that we rest. So rest is important, especially if we're going from similar positions. So we can rest with an antagonist movement, which for us would be a glute stretch, or we can just be a complete rest. So a simple glute stretch would actually just be seated pigeon. We could do that if we wanted to. Internal rotation is also a good one that I like to do to alleviate all that external rotation work at the hips. But now we're going to go to the floor. You can stay on your elevation if you want here, but we're going to talk about the cluster. So the cluster I've presented on the platform is where we go from hamstring to middle, hamstring to middle. And I really want to highlight the purpose of this and why this is like such a good drill for us. And it becomes more about the mechanics of the movement from one side to the other. So when I am on the floor, you can just watch me first here, just so you can see the expectations. When I go to my hamstring side first, I should be able to leverage better compression. Okay, and that's the goal here. I want to feel like when I come this way, I'm going to leverage this angle to find compression strength. So the compression strength is the ability to pull myself down. What I'm then going to do when I go to center is trying to keep that compression strength I just had. Okay, so what we don't want to do is find all this compression really nicely and then come out of it and then go to center. Okay, it kind of defeats the purpose of our goals with this exercise. So keep that in mind now. We're going to do 10 seconds in each position. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And we're going to stop at the center on the 6th one. So when you're ready, I want you to choose whatever leg you want to start with. I want you to think about pulling the femur in and finding as much forward compression as possible for a 10-second count. You can reach the arms forward because we want that forward reaching action. Three, 2, 1. So I'm going to sweep my hands to that center position, keeping that compression. This is also an opportunity to experiment with your feet. So dorsiflexed, I'm going to get more hamstring. Plantar flex, I'm going to get some hip flexors coming into the picture a bit more as well, but getting the hamstrings to relax. Coming to the opposite side now, you may feel like you have even more compression. I want you to keep that. So forward reaching. It's only 10 seconds. Take a breath in. Exhale. Come back to center. 10 seconds. Take a breath in. Exhale. Back to the other hamstring. Compress. So we feel like we have the ability to leverage this position even more to come forward. So we're halfway, we're coming back to center now. Hang on to that compression. Pulling forward. Big breath in, exhale, come back to the side. This is our last one. No competition here. Just feel like you've been able to relax deeper. So don't force this. Just keep the compression. That's all we want. We're going to take a breath in, exhale, coming forward. So in this last one, if you want to bring the arms out to the side to grab the feet, just feel how this feels to have that compression strength there. And then we come out. Okay. Use your arms to assist the legs. We can find a resting position. Okay, guys, everyone's holding up good, I hope. You just got the one more discussion to talk about, which is the overreaching. So overreaching is moving outside of this perfect technique, this perfect form that we want to get to. What could be a barrier, though, is if we're always practicing this perfect form, we're never able to assess what happens further down. So sometimes these strategies, I've presented a lot of strategies here, even just with the cluster of how we can strategically assess a greater range, sometimes requires us to just deviate a little bit more away from the technique. So one of the things to think about here is rounded back. So actually trying to monetize your rounded back position and find a deeper range of motion. So I could be just doing that simply by almost performing a Jefferson curl, right? So I could think about being in my pancake and actually segmenting my spine down towards the floor and giving myself a chance to evaluate what's happening down here deeper. So we're going to actually try that one first, if you're comfortable with it, right, guys? So you want to feel like at this point, we're pretty competent in the pancake position, and we're just experiencing a little bit with maybe overreaching to new depths. So when you're ready with me, we'll just go through a couple repetitions of this. I'm going to get nice and tall, and then I'm just going to think about segmenting my spine and curling myself down. And then back up. We're going to go through 5 reps. Let your legs be relaxed. I want to think about bracing my stomach outward. That is our compression strength, right? And then one more. Now, what I can now think about doing is performing that fold. And it's almost like a spine wave, where from that, I've now gotten into this range. And then I'm actually going to think about pulling my chest upward and be forward in the position. So now we're thinking about, okay, I'm kind of sweeping myself down, and then I'm going to bring my head and chest up and forward and hold my stretch. So give that a try now and hold your forward stretch for about a 3 count. 1, 2, 3. Always use your hands for support as needed. Okay, so it's not so much on the isometric all the time. Okay, let's do one more. So there are other strategies that we could be thinking about performing there. But even just going back to an elevated position, right? So we know that the elevated position is going to allow us to potentially get a deeper stretch. Again, from the elevated position, we could think about rounding the back. Last thing I'll just bring up is the use of the slant board. Slant board has been a nice win for a lot of people because it's on a ramp with some grip. So it kind of pulls you into that tilt without having to put as much intention into trying to tilt the pelvis and overarch your back. So some basic strategies there, like the slant board itself could be elevated. So I could elevate the slant board onto some blocks if I needed a bit of a higher position, or onto some plates. This isn't as secure, but like some bumper plates. So that could be one thing, right? Where maybe you need to actually elevate the slant board if you're going to use it. But the slant board has been a nice win, guys. So it essentially is just that little ramp and tilt that we need. It's a bit better than that blocky square type of elevation where we don't feel like we get as much feedback on the pelvic tilt. So something to consider, elevated work, even just your isometric pancake work, having that ramp set up is going to be just something where you get better feedback. So it's that feedback that we're always looking for, is like, I don't actually feel what it is I'm supposed to be feeling. That would be the last thing I would want to just consider in the masterclass. But that is a very deep dive into Pancake. So just to review there before we get into the Q&A. So we did some preparation work. We did side bend series, shortening side series, lengthening side, more specific pancake work. And we did a little overreaching stuff. Could you just train your pancake this way once a week? Certainly. You're going to see benefits to doing that. How this may be organized in a session, though, with that protocol kind of mindset on, you may be working the side bend, short side, lengthening side together as a series, and then exploring with some overreaching or more specific kind of longer contractions afterwards, which is what you'll see presented on the platform more regularly. So I will be making a PDF of that outline that we just did and sharing it on the collection course after for you to download. So we'll open up for some Q&A now. And I'm just seeing if there's any questions put in the box first. So so Jenna is saying the contractions are a game changer. There's a couple different ways. There's so many ways you actually could think about contracting in Pancake. Another one I really like using is like actually pulling yourself with a bar. But I wanted to highlight that we can kind of create those isometrics just with the floor, because I don't want you guys to always feel limited to like, oh, I need to have all this equipment. It's no, we can just be in a pancake. Even sometimes what works well is pressing into a wall, right? So it's actually kind of a simple solution too, is if I'm in my straddle, if I've started to gotten myself to a certain range, I can press into like certain things. Even I've stacked plates before, like bumper plates, and I've pressed the bumper plates really hard. So you can think of all these ways that we can create these, like once we start understanding shortening side, lengthening side, all of those things, you start to get more creative with what you can do there. So Mike was asking about that inner thigh tightness near the knee. I'll tag you in a few things on, excuse me, my voice. On the Mighty Network, we got into this discussion a few times where we talked about releasing the gracilis muscle. And the gracilis muscle, as it comes down, an adductor that attaches more closely to the knee, often plays a role in that tight pulling that we feel around the knee when we do side split and pancake type work. So we can think about strategies for releasing that, just some fascial release work. And fascial release work that has the capacity to be a bit more narrowing is usually a better strategy, like a bar or a stick tends to be a better option for that than like using a foam roller, just where we get a bit more of an isolated release. So I can tag you in that on the Mighty Network. Noreen asked the same question. Chelsea had a good question about relaxing in the pancake. So she was saying, do you just completely relax the legs or do you keep the quads engaged? It's a good train of thought, because quads engaged would still give us relaxation through adductors and hamstrings, and it would give us a little bit of pulling. So it depends on how we're relaxing. Being completely relaxed is important. So from contraction to contraction, going into this state of complete relaxation is important to feel how the body kind of lets go. So if you haven't been doing a complete relaxation, practice that. But having quads engaged, I would still consider that more of a relaxed state in a pancake, especially if we are trying to hang on to further ranges of motion.
we won't necessarily be able to relax in this new range gained, but we want to feel like the contractions have relaxed. So there might just be little pulling actions that like, I want to maintain this new position that I found. So it's kind of more of a strategy in that sense. Sadie is asking about pulling everything towards the hips in Pancake. So keeping the hips strong in Pancake and in side split. This is the attribute of very strong frontal plane flexibility, is the ability to keep the femur pulled in strongly to the acetabulum. So that action of pulling the femurs in strongly is the attribute that we want to be thinking about having, and the quality we want to think about building strength in these positions. So that's really what we're saying. It's like a kind of like an easier way to say pulling everything towards the hips. It's really like pulling your femur deeper into the hip socket. That's also going to allow you to articulate your pelvis better. And that's usually where a lot of issues arise in Pancake and side split work, is when there's been a disconnect there. So the femur starts to come out, or it's not as strong, and it feels like a blocking sensation. And often it's like one side versus the other. So it's like my right side, I feel pulling and blocking, while the right side femur is loose and it has a tendency to be more weak in staying drawn in strongly. And we just need to practice that a bit more. So there's other drills, case by case, that you could think about doing to strengthen that, but just ensuring that that's a quality that you practice is of most importance for sure. JF was asking about the intensity of his psoas and lower back. So were you talking about as we like progressed into the Pancake, or was there what?
Especially when I sort of pull myself, like from side to side, or even when you do the cluster. This particular, I mean, I guess the Pancake position itself, when I'm pulling myself deeper and deeper, like it's pretty intense on the lower back, and it's always been kind of this way. And I'm wondering if maybe I'm overdoing it. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, so there's a potential there to overreach without knowing it, and that's a sure sign where you're feeling it, right? So if you start to feel it in your lower back, this would be where I would recommend staying elevated. So trying to keep, and this is where a smaller elevation comes into play more than a big elevation, because that question comes up a lot too, like how much should I elevate? Well, big elevations are good because you can get a lot more hamstring, but the lower elevations allow us to evaluate the adductors more and what's happening at the low back. So if that was from the floor, was that from the floor?
I mean, it's I can release of the tension or the pain if I do like a hip flexor type of stretch.
Yeah.
Like the couch stretch type of thing in
Yep.
between. But yeah, whether I'm elevated or not, it's pretty much as the same.
Yeah. So we may want to look a bit deeper on some of those shortening side components for you. So this may be where with that protocol I presented earlier, gluteal complex length, short side strength, lateral flexibility, that maybe should just be the focus for you for a bit. We can talk about this offline afterwards and how that might look and feel. But yeah, this is where, we just did like a super deep dive class and I took you to some advanced thoughts. Just want to backtrack now and think, okay, how strong are we on the short side? How is our lateral flexibility? And how is our glute flexibility? And these are things that with now the understanding that you have in training Pancake, if you probably took a training block towards that, you would probably notice a lot of changes into that feeling that you're getting. So we can chat offline about that, but that would be my train of thought right away. It's like, let's look to maybe establish those layers a bit differently and have you put more of a focus on some of those different precursors. But yeah, it is common to have low back pulling and stuff if we start getting to, and that's a sure sign. If you start getting to lengthened positions and you feel like that's a sign of maybe where our focus should be, right? And it's like maybe putting all of our energy into pancake specific positions is not quite where we should be putting that focus first. And it just gives you that reference. It's basically a baseline. And that's what I'll tell most students too, is your pancake, what you feel in your pancake is your baseline. So if we go back to that other protocol approach and then go back to your baseline and you don't feel the low back pulling, okay, well, we know we're making those connections. Limiting factor in obtaining a good anterior pelvic tilt. So, well, there's a couple of things that's going to come into play there. I do want you to have really good glute flexibility and lateral flexibility. That's going to help us create better orientation of the pelvis and the anterior pelvic tilt. Also, we're looking at hip flexors. How is your hip extension compared to hip flexion? And where are those balances? So if that is an issue of having that, and then again, maybe it's coming back to how we just talked about JF situation here. If it's only when you're in pancake specific positions right now, then drawing back and thinking about those other layers and how we can get that operating a bit better for us. But you're going to want to look at those layers presented today, but also hip extension, hip flexion balances will also play a role in how well we can anteriorly tilt the pelvis. Sciatic nerve pain on the right side, certain positions, and end up rounding my back. So I would evaluate if your sciatic nerve is coming from piriformis. So we do have that piriformis, not so piriformis protocol, piriformis specific work that is on the protocols group. We could take a look at that and maybe get a better assessment of where your sciatic pain is deriving from. I also like to look at imbalances from side to side on lateral flexibility for that too. A lot of times, if you do look for lateral components there, you can see that there's an imbalance. QL strength. These would be some areas that I would look at for that. So maybe what we could do first is just take a look at the piriformis work on the protocols group. This is for Gazalia. And then we can get a better assessment of what might be going on with your sciatic pain and just get a little bit more history behind that. Tag Stacy in the gracilis work as well. I'll just reshare it and then everyone can see it. Robert is talking about mobility sticks resting against his feet, pulling into the middle. So I think I know what you mean there, but are you meaning like when you're straddle, you're kind of using that to pull you in further? You can unmute if you want.
Yeah, so basically sitting in the, hi guys, by the way, sorry. Sitting in basically in the straddle pancake, having the mobility stick with the handles basically at my feet and then pulling into the middle. So it's kind of the same idea, I think, as pulling the ground towards you as you're coming in, but you're using that instead. So I've tried it before and I get a good stretch on sort of the inner thigh.
Yeah. And that's the thing, right? Is like when you start making these connections to what you need to work on, you can start being more creative about how you might do that. Like I've done a lot of weird stuff with contractions and pancake in the past. So like one of the big ones I always have done is pushing plates. I would stack plates. I still do that now at the end of a session. I'll just like push into the plates and try to like feel them push further. And it's just always been an easy one if you're lifting and you're just kind of there and it's all accessible. Yeah, pulling the stick or setting a barbell up really low and pulling with it set up on the other side. Stall bars are also really nice, especially if you have stall bars that are kind of set up outside of the wall so that you can actually put your feet kind of like off to the side and pull yourself a lot closer in. Even just bands. So if I wrap a heavy band, like a lot heavier than the one we have here, or even that one's fine too, and I just kind of pull myself like I'm, pulling myself out of a swamp or something. There's a lot of creative ways that we can think about pulling ourselves forward. But the thought process too, guys, is it's the opposite that's even more important sometimes, is pulling yourself inward. So some of those contractions we did today where I was pulling the hands in and I was getting you to pull the heels towards the glutes. Those are the ones that really create the type of relaxation phases that we want afterwards. So oftentimes we neglect that because we just want to go further, right? We want to go deeper, 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 but we hone in on what needs to happen inward as well. Then we can get a lot of breakthroughs also. That's a good one, Robert. It's cool to hear cool to hear your voice too, because we chat so much. Have never heard you talk yet.
I'm usually quite shy on these kind of things, so it's cool. Kind of, yeah. Cheers, mate.
Yeah, thanks. So someone else is just saying they're low back heavy as well. So same thought process there that hopefully that helped, but you gave the advice I gave to JF. And again, I will post this up in the collection course, so it's kind of easier. You don't have to go through the video as much. You can kind of just look at those fine notes on samples, but we'll probably have you focus on that shortening side, glute, side bend kind of layers as like a focus to get you really comprehending those prerequisites before just going hard into your pancake. So a really good question here about loading your back with weight. That's very common, right? So people will just kind of put some plates on their back and it's that feeling of coming, downward. It's a good strategy, but at what stage? Okay, so I talked about 60 degrees range of motion. I would want some prerequisites there, especially because I know you can get them without having to do that first. So again, this is kind of like just imitating what you see, right? So it's like, oh, I'll just put a weight on my back and everything will work. It's like, no, you still need to understand the layers, right? So that strategy will not work very well for you if you haven't taken the time to understand the layers. But when you get there, it is a great strategy. JF just tagged everyone. Thanks, buddy. So Ethan's talking about issues with his compression work. You can unmute and maybe just give more context to that if you'd like.
Yeah, so it's a bit like, sorry, hi everyone. Yeah, it's kind of, so obviously the muscle runs along next to the spine. So when you're going into that compression, and I think it's sort of maybe over lengthening of the muscle, because in that compression position, I'm very rounded because I'm very sort of low back tight. So I'm not sure if that's what's causing it, but sort of, is there anything to sort of combat that kind of issue?
Yeah, I'm really big on like seeing certain things first, and you probably get that from when we have our conversations too, is like, where are you at with your glute flexibility work? Where are you at with your lateral flexibility work? We could go deeper into shortening side strength work, because short side strength work is compression work. Like that's really where we're going to get those connections made. And there's just so many, there is different approaches to that maybe you need to look a bit differently at how you approach that. So those would be 3 things I would want to see first, is those abilities that you have there, like in evaluating lateral flexibility. Do you have your full pigeon pose right now? Like those are some things there, right? But if we were starting to get into like thoracic breathing expansion, it can go really deep.
Okay.
So we could start talking about like infrasternal angles if you're ER bias or IR bias. This is work that I've been getting more into, and I can certainly recommend Connor Harris's work. There's one individual I've been taking his coursework and just trying to get a better understanding of how some of us are made in certain ways where we just need to have different prescriptions towards those biases. So it could go super deep, but just keeping it, I guess, to what we've presented here today, I would want to look at those layers first, and then maybe evaluate if there's like some bias to ER, IR that might help you a bit further in that kind of scenario. So,
Okay, thank you.
yeah,
Appreciate that.
thanks for the question. Just looking through here. Does anyone have a question they just came to mind, or a thought that they wanted to unmute? Now would be a good time for that as well too.
Yeah, I had a question about the straddle elephant walk.
Yes.
Hi, everybody, too. So when you're looking at not going into more of a side-to-side motion, when I'm straightening either leg and my head is going to center, would it be fair to have the cue be straighten the leg and pull your head down so your leg is going on that slight diagonal line to straighten, and then the head is going down on a vertical line, so you're really just pulling everything in that direction rather than doing a side-to-side motion?
Yeah. I think too that it's like, you see it with elephant walk too, it's like the eagerness to straighten the leg, right?
Yeah.
So it's almost like, because we have one leg bent and one leg straight, we can like really straighten that other leg. And sometimes people just don't pay attention to like how we actually straighten the leg. And we straighten the leg through knee extension of the quad flexing, right? So I might even also ensure that the individual understands that we're not just kind of like jelly belly quad straightening the leg, but we're actually using the quad to flex, because when the quad flexes, that compression strength, it gets stronger, and you can feel the hips kind of push us down a bit further. So that might be a detail to even think about more now that I think about it. And, it's like how
Because I see when you and Nick do elephant walks, whenever you guys perform them, there's that pause right there as you're going in the knee extension, which is probably quadricep engagement and an actual like intention through the knee extension. Would that be fair to say that?
Definitely. Like I'm really
Okay.
I'm really trying to like straighten my leg with as much intention of pulling deeper as possible. And even when we come back to center with both legs being bent, the idea where I've actually presented on the platform too, I'm actually sitting on a chair. And that is that feedback that's more specific to Pancake. So
okay,
if you look at that drill, as it was presented on the platform, I actually sit to a chair, and it pulls us into that specific kind of tilt we want Pancake, and then we straighten and pull down. So yeah, there's options to think about there. But yeah, I think how we think about straightening the leg is more important than just straightening the leg, right?
Right.
Yeah, good question.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions, Hugh?
Hello. I don't know if you briefly mentioned the loaded stretching, kind of sitting down with the weight on the back. I just wanted to know your opinion on like a split, almost like a Jefferson curl style, where the 2 feet would be elevated in the air, and then you'd be using gravity directly down, and almost doing that. Yeah, and then kind of like almost like roll with the weight down, and then as you
Yeah.
sort of get there, try to like straighten
Yeah.
in the bottom.
Yep, straddle Jefferson curl I do use, and I present it primarily right now in the graduate program. It's a more of a loaded stretching program. So it's like you go from the basics into like more loaded stretching work. And it's yeah, it's one of my favorites. It's a bit harder to set up. Like that's the only thing is you sometimes run into dangerous setups where someone sends you a video and you're like, that's very unsafe, but it is one of my favorites. One thing that I see with the straddle Jefferson curl sometimes is that people, and it's with the Jefferson curl in general, is they kind of stay too close to the body as if they're like afraid to like, but we want to think about how the spine segments and where like the fulcrum and the weights are. And we want to think about it just staying in a straight line, which is the same with the straddle Jefferson curl, is like, as you go down, keep the weight distribution in a straight line rather than trying to like move the weight inward. But another good exercise for that would be that straddle pull. I've presented with the barbell. It works well on stall bars too, where we're now pulling, and it gives you that compressive pull in your pancake a little bit better. So no, yeah, I really like that one, Hugh, for sure. I would probably have that more as like leading up to like the pancake work. So maybe at the start of a session. But yeah, like you could even probably think about how the masterclass was presented today and maybe do a full session that had straddle Jefferson curl in it. But it is a good one.
Yeah, thank you. And I was just going to say, where would you put it in terms of like the protocol, but you also answered the question, so thank you.
Yeah, I would put it on length, flexibility, like lengthened side specific, because we're loading up, but there's going to be a lot more intention on the lengthening side on that one and going a lot deeper. So could be that option 2 when I presented, lengthening, shortening, lateral kind of component. Any other questions, guys? Cool. Well, that was super fun. I hope that I'm going to obviously play this back, and I'm also going to put that PDF together so that you can see how this class was laid out as more of like a focus on the layers of a pancake. And then you can have that to reflect on, and maybe we can create some more discussion about that approach. And obviously this is something we can do again with all of the other expressions as well too, right? So splits, bridge, all those kind of things. We can have the same discussion. What are the layers? What are the considerations at this stage or that stage? And it's just a great way to get a better understanding, because programs are good. Don't get me wrong. I love presenting programs to you guys, but trust me, I know from my own personal experience, there's not probably going to be one program that gets you there, and there's going to be a lot of troubleshooting. And that's why when I opened the membership, I wanted it to be more than programs, because I know that that's what you need. You need a program to follow, but we need these thoughts, these new protocols, and just these ways to understand the layers of flexibility, which I think is where Liam was asking about the badger. Yeah, the badger didn't make it, but I think we all brought ourselves the perseverance of the honey badger in this class for sure. But it's great. Awesome, guys. Well, thank you for sitting down and doing some pancakes with me. I look forward to sharing this out, discussing more of this stuff with you, but reach out if anything comes up afterwards, and I'll get to all your questions. See you guys.
Everybody.
Thanks, Lucas.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Take it easy.
Yeah, we'll chat soon.
Bye bye. Thanks so much.
Nice to see you, Tammy. Nice to see you, Hernan.
Bye. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thanks. Nice to see you, Marco.